Liz Lynn playing Demir Death Shadow, popularized by Josh Utter Layton at Pro Tour 25th anniversary. Tanner Grace popularizing Grixis Delver by playing it literally every team tournament for the last 2 years. Find a new deck.
Tannen says no, ready to play Grixis Delver again. Here you see the fetch from Liz Lynn. Probably going to get Watery Grave. There we go. Untapped, of course, doing damage to herself, trying to get down to a life total where Death Shadow will be able to enter the battlefield. Turn 1 play of Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, and the custom white-bordered checklist card there from Liz Lynn. Now, the last time I saw Tanner Grace play this particular matchup was against David Thomas in the Dallas Team Open last year. And Tannen kept, I believe it was a two-lander, a wasteland, and like a volcanic island. David Thomas went turn 1, cycle Street Wraith, reanimate. Tannen went for the Hail Mary of wasteland your land, hope you don't have another one. David Thomas very easily won that game because he had the second land. He followed that up with a Delver of Secrets, and then a snuff out on Tannen's turn 3 Young Pyromancer, and the game was over.
Yeah, I think this match can be snowbally like that. It's got very potent threats on both sides, ways to keep the opponent off the battlefield. So you could potentially see a game like that, or you could see a slugfest. It kind of goes one of two ways, honestly.
Right, and that was a previous build of Grixis Delver. You know, things have changed since then. The deck has gone a little more heavy usually on Gurmag Angler, a little bit lighter on the more expensive spells. You know, 4 copies of Gurmag Angler here from Tanner Grace could be the make or break point in this matchup.
Here you see a Thoughtseize from Tannen Grace. Considering options, we see a Delver of Secrets, Street Wraith, and Stubborn Denial on Liz's side. Looks like Tannen's going to take the Delver here, and he does.
Yeah, just eliminating those threats one at a time so it puts less stress on his removal spells. That Stubborn Denial, if Liz is able to assemble a 5/5 Death Shadow or a Gurmag Angler of their own, it's going to be a great way to protect that threat.
Liz does find the blind Delver flip here. I think that was a Stifle, possibly? It's tough with these the Amonkhet invocations. Very difficult to spot them. We'll have to wait and see when Liz actually casts the card.
Yeah. So that cycle of the Street Wraith here, that's going to put Liz down to 15 life. Looks like it is a Thoughtseize.
A Thoughtseize.
We're going to take care
obviously
of either the Young Pyromancer or the Gurmag Angler here. Tannen's hand not very good. If Liz actually finds an answer to Young Pyromancer, this could be all she wrote.
Little camera glitch there for just a second. We got a brief look in at the other match.
Yeah, this is a pretty tough decision. The Death Shadow deck doesn't have a lot of ways to actually deal with Gurmag Angler, but Young Pyromancer could potentially spell like some trouble by just generating a bunch of threats for a single card.
And Liz agrees. She's going to take the Young Pyromancer despite the big body of Gurmag Angler, just saying I'll find an answer eventually.
All right, so Young Pyromancer down. Gurmag in hand, but still a little bit away from being able to cast that Gurmag Angler. The
right.
Force Will, kind of a dead card at this juncture.
For the time being, yeah.
But Liz is already down pretty low, just dealing a lot of damage with Fetch Lands, Thoughtseize, Street Wraith. Looks like a Force Will can be paired nicely, actually, with the Stubborn Denial in hand.
Indeed.
To be an answer for that Gurmag Angler should Tannen have a lucky sequence next turn that gets that Gurmag onto the stack.
And I think Liz agreed and picked up that card. Yep, there you see the Force of Will in hand for Liz. Could be a nasty surprise waiting for Tannen.
Yeah, Tannen, looks like drew Ponder for the turn. Could cast that, start digging for something like a Lightning Bolt to cast off of the Volcanic Island. Could also just go for a Wasteland to kind of slow down the mana development from Liz's side of things. Not really sure what line he's going to take here. My gut, though, says go for the Lightning Bolt, cast a Ponder off of the Underground Sea. He has a tilt towards red for his removal. 1 a copy of a Braid and 2 copies of Lightning Bolt, and definitely needs to find one of those here to take care of that Delver of Secrets.
So Tannen is going to cast the Ponder. Looks like a Brainstorm, a Daze, and a Fetch land on top. Tannen's going to have a think, taking a look back at his hand.
That's a tough Ponder here because you obviously want to keep a Ponder that has a few spells in it, especially Brainstorm, but at the same time, you're not quite in desperation mode, but that Delver of Secrets is looming, and if you don't take care of it soon, the follow-up threat from Liz is going to start closing the door, and your cards are just going to get worse and worse over time.
Tannen did choose to keep that set on top and drew the Daze on that turn. Liz going to go ahead and cycle the Street Wraith and has a Reanimate.
That's gas.
For the young Pyromancer.
Yeah, Reanimate targeting young Pyromancer here. That's going to allow Liz to generate a bunch of threats. And if they want to fight over it here with that Force of Will that they kept from the Ponder last turn, this is going to be pretty good. But it might not even be worth it. If Liz uses the Force of Will in hand, they're going to be left with no resources to actually turn on the young Pyromancer. So it might be just way better to hold that Force of Will up for the Gurmag Angler next turn.
Liz agreed. Passed on Force of Willing back, looking instead to get Tannen when he goes for that Gurmag Angler. They know it's coming here. This is the setup for Gurmag. Here we see a Wasteland, going to deal with that untapped land. Float a mana.
Yep, we're going to pass priority, move to second main phase. The mana goes away. But Liz still has access to Force of Will. And if Tannen actually ends up finding a Brainstorm here, or sorry, Daze off the Brainstorm here, he can maybe protect this Gurmag Angler from that Force of Will.
Right. So here you see the Force of Will from Liz. Going to pitch the Stubborn Denial, fall to 7.
Yeah, Desperation Brainstorm here, but this is worthwhile.
Oh, yeah.
2 lands and a Bolt.
Look like a complete miss.
Now that Gurmag's going away, but the Bolt on top, Tannen here and the Wasteland, this could be really bad for Liz. Tannen keeps let's say he keeps the Wasteland. Next turn, that means he's Thoughtseize or discard proof,
correct.
Right? Next turn, draws the Wasteland, goes Wasteland your last land, Bolt your Delver, and leave you with nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
Yeah, that leaves Liz very vulnerable. She's absolutely looking at the top of the deck right now to see what's available. Life totals will be even after this next attack. Tannen falling to 7.
Death Shadow, something, anything, no!
Death Shadow would be bonkers there.
And it's all coming crashing down.
Yeah, things could really get out of control fast here. Tannen has the Bolt. There goes Delver. Liz with no permanence in play.
That's a tough spot to be. Basic Swamp, though, that is not a bad draw. That allows Liz to cast any of those black threats here. And
Death Shadow off the top.
Coming off the top of 6/6. That's bigger than everything in Tannen's deck.
Beautiful draw from
the
Liz.
Head Scratcher. How'd it go so wrong? Liz had no permanence.
Tannen has the Delver, looking to buy a little time, but Death Shadow is a potent threat from Liz.
That is the face of a beaten man.
I think we now have Force of Will possibly active. I know the Force of Will is in hand. I don't know if there's a second blue card.
I think it is Force of Will blue card in hand.
Wow. Wow. What
a string of
kind
draws.
Top of the deck.
Tannen here, just land.
Just fetch lands,
at
yeah.
1. Going to have to chump block with Delver, and I do not believe Tannen actually has any sequence of draws here that gets him out. Brainstorm is a good start. And a Gurmag.
How about the big fish, Todd? Does that change anything?
Whoo, baby.
Yeah, I do not believe Tannen has any combination here that
Remember what I
would
said
change the
about
situation.
rooting for decks that I like to play?
Oh, yeah. Do you have any bias towards Death Shadow at all, Todd?
I like Death Shadow quite a bit.
I'm over here fanning Todd right now. He's literally sweating with excitement.
No, Nick's in the sideboard just with a pizza box. Just
trying to keep Todd from overheating as he gets excited over Death Shadow. That was a really interesting game, though, and a really exciting spot for Liz. Thought the early game was played very well.
Yes.
Got into a position where certainly the top of the deck had to be kind, but it was there.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a point where they were both at 7 life. Liz with 1 card in hand, no permanence.
Right.
as early as the next turn, had complete control.
Yeah, crazy turns. Why don't we look at the sideboards here? We're going to go over to Liz's sideboard. We're looking at 2 Liliana of the Last Hope, 1 Snapcaster Mage, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Throne of Geth, 1 Spell Pierce, 2 Bitter Blossom, 1 Dark Blast, 2 Diabolic Edict, and 2 Hymn to Torok. Todd, what do you like here?
So I like cutting Force Will in the matchup from both sides. I think it's going to be a real grind fest. There are a few cards that you might want to Force Will, like Gurmag Angler, but after sideboard, you get more raw answers to that type of a threat. So I think it's just more important that your overall number of resources stays reasonably high. I really like Hymn to Torok, Diabolic Edict. Dark Blast is pretty solid because it takes care of both Young Pyromancer as well as Delver of Secrets, and it can kind of check the next one that is played too, or just kind of hover in your graveyard for the time being. Not a huge fan of Bitter Blossom, but in the right spot, it could be very good. The problem with Bitter Blossom in this matchup is if your opponent plays a True Name Nemesis, it races Bitter Blossom very easily, and with you dealing yourself a lot of damage, it's possible that Bitter Blossom just deals you the last few points and can't quite close the game. I like Bitter Blossom a lot against Swords to Plowshare matchups,
right.
Not necessarily here.
Yeah, and 2 True Name Nemesis in Tannen's deck, too. Certainly have to be aware of those.
Right. And then lastly, Snapcaster Mage, Liliana of the Last Hope, looking to play a longer game and be able to weather the storm, and these are the perfect cards to help you do just that.
Let's go over to Tannen's side. We see 1 Abrade, 1 Izzet Static Caster, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Bitter Blossom for Tannen as well, 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Engineered Explosive, 1 Island, 2 Diabolic Edict, and 2 Pyroblast. Todd, what are you doing if you're Tannen?
So the Bitter Blossoms on Tannen's side are actually quite good because all of the threats from Liz's side of things are just basically big dumb monsters, right?
Yes.
The Bitter Blossom not only can act as an active threat and start turning creatures sideways, and it really weathers that removal storm that both players are going to have to basically fight through. But at the same time, it can also chump block Giant Death Shadows, Giant Gurmag Anglers forever, and there are no True Name Nemesis from Liz's side of things. So I like the Bitter Blossoms. Kind of looking at the rest of it, the Engineered Explosive is a good way for Tannen to be able to deal with Death Shadow because he has no other real ways to deal with it other than those 2 Diabolic Edicts. And then, of course, Pyroblast is great in any blue matchup as a counter to Brainstorm.
So, I want to take a moment to talk about the Creature Collection this month over at Star City Games. If you love playmats as much as I do, I'm a huge playmat aficionado. I always, always, always play with a playmat. You're going to want to check out this month's Creature Collection. It's Yeti Steady Go. It is available now. We have it in both playmats, sleeves, and the player bundles, which contain playmats and sleeves.
Yep. And you can pick these up. Go.starcitygames.com/creature collection and get them directly from the site. But I believe we also have them available with SCG Game Night. Let me ask the director. Yes, no? Yes?
Yeah, they are available for Game Night. They're February's exclusive. You see right there on screen.
There it is. That's in my head, right? We were on the other slide, and I needed to see this slide to really connect the dots, but I had it. All right.
Well, if we have them here, we may as well talk through the other things in the Game Night collection here. There you see February's Yeti Steady Go. Why don't we look at March as well? Veni Vidi Armadici. Todd, a huge Armadillo fan, as you confessed on day 1, if you caught that. And finally, we move on to our April Cluck and Dagger.
He's stealing the eggs.
Yeah, this ferret is so...
What a jerk.
He's a gangster. Look at him plotting to take out those chickens.
Oh, he's coming for Fredo.
Love the Cluck and Dagger. You can check that out at go.starcitygames.com/game night.
It's a classic Joe Pesci situation going on.
Do have some updates from the other matches. You see Ross Merriam up a game over Ryan Overturf right now in the quasi-Phoenix Mirror. Of course, Ryan with the Teamer addendum to his Phoenix deck. Ross playing the straight Izzet version. Meanwhile, over in Standard, Jacob Hagen up a game against Jim Davis. That's the Azorius aggro mirror there.
Yeah, so the Phoenix matchup, Ross does have 2 copies of Terramander, which are fairly explosive if given enough time. And I feel like if both players are just going through a lot of removal spells, a lot of Phoenix playing defense, things like that, there's a chance that Terramander ends up playing a significant role there, being such a cheap and large threat.
Excited to see Terramander do its thing this weekend, both Standard and Modern. Hearing rumors of Legacy. I haven't caught it on my matches yet, but it is out there. There are Legacy Terramanders making a difference. Looks like we're ready to go here. We're going to start with Tannen Grace leading on Underground Sea and a Ponder, looking to fix draws a little bit. See a Brainstorm, a Ponder, and a Wasteland on top. Going to put those in the appropriate order and then proceed from there.
Yeah, I think second land here is ideal, but Wasteland is not, because Liz could just choose, if they have a weaker hand, to just Wasteland. And then Tannen's left without any colored sources to cast anything. With that Diabolic Edict in hand, Tannen does want a second mana, but he also just wants a second colored source as a backup in case he gets hit with a Wasteland.
Yeah, one of the cool things about both Grixis Delver and these Dimir Death Shadow decks really is that they can play those bifurcated game plans. They can really look to restrict mana early, get on board, and just end the game quick, or they can play the longer, grindy games.
Right. Cycling of a Street Wraith here from Lynn. Turn 1 Reanimate on Street Wraith, a particularly powerful play from this Dimir Shadows side of things, because that 3/4 Swamp Walk dodges Lightning Bolt and is virtually unblockable for the entire game.
Oh yeah, let's see if they have it here. It also sets up your life total beautifully for a Death Shadow. Not going to see that play this time. Instead, it's going to be Ponder.
I mean, it is very strong, but going down to 11 life on the first turn against a Delver strategy, not always the best idea. True Name Nemesis comes down.
Yeah.
Delver Secret starts swinging at you, and all of a sudden, one Lightning Bolt's lethal.
Yeah, Grixis Delver, a deck that can turn the corner fairly quickly.
Yeah, you got to manage your life total pretty well in this style of matchup.
Tannen's going to lead with a Brainstorm here.
That was a bait Brainstorm, actually, with a Daze in hand and needing that second mana source.
Right.
But instead just gets to resolve it, finds the land, luckily. He's going to shuffle away a couple of stinkers and keep the juice flowing. Looks like a Gurmag Angler, Diabolic Edict floating around there, as well as Force Will, Daze, and Delver of Secrets.
Tannen with the classic legacy play, Brainstorm into fetch land. One of the reasons players love this format so much, that combination of cards.
I want to point out a really interesting development from the Grixis Delver decks. A few months back, I know I can't be the only person, but it came to my attention that Gurmag Angler effectively was the only card that mattered at a certain point in a lot of these Delver mirror matches. And in order to facilitate being able to play more than just 2 copies, Tannen has actually gone the route of playing 4 copies of Thought Scour in the main deck to complement his 4 Gurmag Angler. This is something we've seen a lot before in Modern, not so much in Legacy.
Yeah, interesting take from Tannen. I mean, I hate that my brain does these repeated patterns over and over, but as soon as I see those Thought Scours, I start thinking Terramanders. If your 5/5 matters for Gurmag Angler, why not explore the Terramander angle as well?
That's a little bit harder to turn on, but I definitely get what you're saying. You know, Thought Scour is effectively 3 raw mana points towards casting Gurmag Angler.
Right.
Whereas for Terramander, it could potentially only be 1.
Could be less, absolutely.
Liz here with that Dismember on the Delver of Secrets. Taking care of the threat, definitely something you want to do, though. Dismember has a lot of value against Grixis Delver and being able to take care of Gurmag Angler. So it is interesting to know that Liz uses that precious Dismember here and 4 points of life to take care of Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, would have preferred to deploy something like Fatal Push instead to clean up that threat, but you work with what you have, and Liz forced to use Dismember in that spot. Obviously getting Death Shadow online very early, and there you see a Death Shadow from Liz.
This is just turn 2. This feels like we have been playing Magic for 5 turns by now from either side, and both players operating on a low amount of mana effectively every single turn. Tannen here going for that Diabolic Edict after letting the Death Shadow resolve, even though he has both Daze and Force of Will. I would have liked to have seen Tannen go for a Daze on the Death Shadow. Using those Dazes in the right spots is key, and you know, effectively gets to do the same thing here with the Daze on the Force of Will.
Right, and ate a lot of cards from Liz given that line of play. Right,
but if Liz just had a handful of Dazes, you know, there's a chance that Tannen ends up losing that fight.
Right. High risk, high reward, I think you can classify that play as.
Right, and being able to bounce the land, though, is a huge deal for Tannen. Replays his land for the turn and casts Gurmag Angler after using his 2 mana on Diabolic Edict.
Yeah, and Liz in a world of danger here, especially with an untapped Shock land, but has the Diabolic Edict, I believe.
Yes, that is a Diabolic Edict. Tannen going to try to protect with the Force of Will. Liz is in a lot of trouble here, already down to 6 life. The follow-up to Death Shadow, that is bigger than a Gurmag Angler, sir. 7-7, staring down a 5-5.
Well played from Liz. Let's see what Tannen has as a response here. Think he has a brainstorm in hand? He does. Big, big play from Tannen there, looking to find an answer to that Death Shadow. I think I see a Lightning Bolt, Wasteland, and a Daze, and another Brainstorm. So we will get some redraws potentially.
Right. Tannen here looks like he's going to keep Wasteland, Daze. Probably going to pop a land, and then hold up Daze on any sort of 2-mana play that Liz could deploy this turn, or potentially 1 mana into 1 mana play.
Right.
Delver of Secrets, the pickup for Liz on the draw step. Looks like a Street Wraith hanging out over there. Not a huge fan of cycling that at the moment.
Right.
But an attack here for 7, followed by a Delver of Secrets. Looks like it could be the play.
Starting to do a little racing from Liz.
Yeah, I like this point of trying to turn the corner here. Delver of Secrets in a pinch could opt to chump block. But with Tannen not currently having access to red mana, it's possible that that Liz could just take the hit to the face, hope Tannen doesn't have Bolt plus red mana off this Brainstorm. Oh, he found it.
Does he have the red source? Yeah, there you see a fetch land, Misty Rainforest.
Yeah, Tannen going to put back likely 2 lands or a land and a spell and keeping the 1 land for the red source. My guess, attacking for 5 and putting Liz to the test. Do you chump block or do you take it? With just Street Wraith in hand, I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, it's a difficult decision for Liz because obviously you're thinking lethal on the swing back from your huge Death Shadow, but you have to sense something is up from Tannen at that point. He's not going to leave himself dead to just the return attack from the Death Shadow.
Right, and it could be just a blocker, but the worst case scenario here is Bolt.
Right. Let's see if Liz finds the block here.
If Liz takes the hit here, game's over. We're going to game 3.
I would be very suspicious on Liz's side.
I mean, the downside is if it's just something like Delver of Secrets, right?
Right.
You know, and you have to figure out, can I actually win the game if I chump block with this Delver of Secrets?
Very good point.
And sometimes the answer is just no.
Right.
But in this spot with the 1 card in hand, it's just a Street Wraith. You know, you can chump block, turn that Street Wraith into a different card still, sitting at 4 life instead of 3 or less.
A gut-churning decision from Liz here. We know the outcome if she chooses not to block. Impossible to know in Liz's spot. And I do think they've chosen to take the damage and is going to be lightning bolted out of the game. A really tough spot for Liz to decode exactly what was going on Tannen's side there. Obviously, the red mana completely disguised.
Yeah, that is an aggressive no block. That is the type of play that I think great players can make. Don't play scared, play to win.
Right, right. There's, again, risk-reward. And I think this matchup really encapsulates that risk-reward principle. There's all kinds of these micro decisions that are putting you in vulnerable ranges and leaving you with difficult decisions, and you really have to figure out how to get the most out of your cards and take the risks at the right time.
Right.
Any changes you want to discuss for sideboarding here with players alternating the play and draw, or you think things are pretty static regardless of which side you're on?
Yeah, I think that things mostly stay the same. The way the games play out, they're just going to be, again, a resource battle from either side. A lot of wastelands, a lot of 1-for-1 removal. Looks like Tannen's actually chosen to keep in at least some number of Force of Wills. I think Force of Will from both sides, actually.
Yeah.
Playing more of a tempo game as opposed to, a resource battle. So we'll see just how effective those Force of Wills are going to be after sideboard here in Game 3 between Dimir Death Shadow and Grixis Delver.
You do see Liz going back to the sideboard, apparently, looking to make some changes.
It's possible that on the draw, Liz didn't want him to Turok because it's so bad against
Daze. Right.
But on the play, it's so easy to defend and such a powerful effect that you absolutely want it. But I could see, basically lowering the curve when you're on the draw to make sure you can maximize the amount of spells you play. Whereas on the play, you want the most raw, powerful spells you can play.
Yeah, I think him is a card that does very, very greatly depending on which side of the matchup you're taking. Daze a little bit of variability as well, but I think it's just too important to either of these decks' game plan. They're both adept at restricting mana access on the other side, so maybe not really fiddling with those numbers too much. No updates in the other matches thus far. It remains Ross Merriam up a game over Ryan Overturf in the quasi-Phoenix mirror. Meanwhile, over in the Azorius aggro mirror, still up a game for Jacob Hagen.
Now, the problem with the Phoenix mirror is that no player wants to be the first one to attack with Phoenix and trade, because then the Phoenixes can't come back after the attack step. And so the other player who was on defense the first time gets to return their Phoenixes first and then attack. So there could be a lot of sitting on your hands, waiting for the opponent to do something, digging for specifically thing in the ice or an answer for said thing in the ice.
See a good show of sportsmanship there from Liz and Tannen, giving each other a little fist bump between rounds, saying well played on both sides.
That's Tannen, just fist bumping all over the place.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, if he's basically a walking fist bump emoji.
That is one of the most interesting descriptions of a human being I've ever heard in my life. A walking fist bump emoji. I'm not taking points away for accuracy. I think you nailed it, but I don't know that I've ever heard that before.
Me, I'm somewhere between the frustrated blowing smoke out my nose one and the salt emoji. Somewhere in the middle there.
I've never considered my personal emoji. I'll think about it. I'll come back in a few rounds.
String. Everyone is a string.
Okay.
Very few people are one, Tannen, fist bump. That's it.
Looks like we have a result from the modern match. Ryan has evened the match up. Game apiece. A lot more contentious round here in round 11 than what we saw in round 10. Very close match for all sides.
Yeah, no clean sweeps happening here. Game 3 here for both Tannen and Liz's match, as well as Ross and Ryan.
I do think Liz took a mulligan here. I think they're going to be opening on 6 as opposed to 7.
Well, I saw a handshake on the first table. It's possible Jacob Hagen took down the match 2-0. So we got some deciders here between these two matches left playing game 3.
Yeah, we'll see if Liz can clinch it for their team here, or if it'll be up to the Overturf Merriam quasi-mirror to decide the match.
I hope not. I do not want to switch to a Phoenix mirror. Give me a break.
No bias from Todd, as usual.
I do like Phoenix decks. I do not want to watch a Phoenix mirror. They're just doing the same thing, just mono spinning the wheels.
Fair enough. Liz leading with the Thoughtseize here. I now recognize that Invocation Thoughtseize, having seen it a couple times.
Right. You are never going to forget what that looks like.
Right.
I don't know. It kind of looks like the dude from Power Rangers that was the big dog thing. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I think I'm too old for Power Rangers. I was kind of like, well, I'm 36. It was kind of like, yeah, it was kind of just happening when I had aged out of it.
Moltar, the gold one? Is that it?
Doing nothing for me, Todd.
Okay.
Nothing.
Right.
Actual nothing. That, to me, looks like some kind of scary bat creature. That's how I'll always remember it.
Right now it does, but when you're, when it's far away, kind of looks like Moltar. Or Goldtar? I don't know, man.
I'm going to take your word for it. Passing back to Tannen here, we do see Underground Sea and a Ponder. Going to look to fix the draw a bit on Tannen's side. Looks like Underground Sea, Lightning Bolt, and didn't quite catch the third card. Tannen is going to leave those 3 cards on top. Takes the draw off Ponder, passes back to Liz. Liz cycles Street Wraith, going to fall to 14 here. Draws off the top.
Looks like another Invocation Thoughtseize, but that might be a Diabolic Edict. Liz looking for more mana here, casting that Ponder.
Right.
Trying to protect from Wasteland.
Finds, I think, their own Wasteland on the top in those 3 cards.
Yeah, that could be good. But the Ponder likely found at least one more land, so I would not be super inclined to just pop that off right this second.
Right.
Definitely looking for a little more development from my side. My side being the Dimir Death Shadow side, obviously, because that's the deck I play.
Obviously. Unbiased Todd. Liz going to pass the turn back to Tannen. Tannen has the thoughts. He's going to get to take a look at Liz's hand.
Yeah, this Thoughtseize is very important from Tannen's side of things to get information about how to sequence over the next few turns. Notably, Liz actually didn't cast that second copy of Thoughtseize, kind of waiting. The Ponder cards on top must have been very good because that fetch line just doesn't want to shuffle them away.
She may want to draw a Wasteland this turn, possibly. It'll be interesting to see what the top card is.
I think the option to either fetch away or not is also important.
Okay, very good point.
Because if Tannen here just says go and doesn't play a creature, you know, Liz knows that Tannen just has like a bunch of card draw effects in hand probably, so that Wasteland's not nearly as effective. So in a turn, a fetch land here to shuffle away that Wasteland might be ideal.
Liz agrees, going to fall to 13, go find a land. Tannen, of course, took the threat with the Thoughtseize.
Yeah, that Gurmag Angler, a huge part of both players' strategies, specifically in this matchup.
We are going untapped Watery Grave here. That's going to bring Liz down to 11.
Now Tannen here with access to a Brainstorm, one of the most powerful cards Legacy has to offer. At any point, he draws a useless discard spell. You know, extra Force of Will, an extra Daze if Liz has a bunch of land drops. He can shuffle those away. Liz doesn't have access to Brainstorm just yet, but 4 copies in the deck could find it soon, and we could have a real slugfest of a game over the next few turns. That Dark Blast from Liz's side can make sure that something like Delver of Secrets, a young Pyromancer, doesn't really get off the ground, as well as the Thoughtseize can strip Tannen of a potentially large threat next turn like a Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, Tannen, I think, knows he's likely to face Thoughtseize this turn, having seen it with his own Thoughtseize, possibly wanting to use the Brainstorm to protect that. But Liz actually just going to pass, no play.
Yeah, there's something to be said about casting a Thoughtseize into a known Brainstorm.
Right.
And if Liz casts that Thoughtseize there, Tannen gets to cast the Brainstorm and then protect both of his most important cards on top of the deck. Choosing not to do the Thoughtseize there from Liz's side, I think, is a very smart play.
I agree. It's going to work out well. Tannen, though, did find a second copy of Brainstorm. Unfortunately for Liz, showed good patience with the Thoughtseize, but may not get rewarded for it. Depends what Tannen does here.
Interesting, Liz actually didn't play the Swamp either. If Liz is able to draw Brainstorm, can use that extra land to toss it back, but also kind of hides the fact that Liz is not overly vulnerable to Wasteland at the moment and may actually change the course of Tannen's play this turn, make him tilt towards using the Wasteland instead of casting like a young Pyromancer and trying to protect it with something like Force of Will.
Great pickup, Todd, and it just emphasizes how subtle all the decisions are in this matchup. Both players know they're faced with a very talented opponent on the other side of the table, taking all these small edges and intimations into account.
Yeah, Legacy, very often the games are played from the hand as opposed to on the battlefield. Not a whole lot of combat math, not a whole lot of removal back and forth. You have fewer turns over the course of the game that actually end up mattering as opposed to something like Standard or even Modern. And every small decision matters a lot.
And you're right, Liz was able to kind of bait that that Wasteland out of Tannen. Use that to buy a little bit more time to solidify their position, find some more maybe threats, maybe some answers.
Yeah, Thoughtseize into Delver here seems like a pretty solid play. Delver being the pickup for the turn. Thoughtseize is going to see if the coast is clear. There it is! Goldar! Or is that his name Goldar? Did you look it up? Goldar! I got it! That's what it looks like on the Thoughtseize. It went from far away.
It kind of does.
Far away.
It kind of.
Right?
I will give this one to you. Right. I actually think you nailed it.
There it is. Bang.
Yeah, that's close, Todd. That was very well done.
Wow. Okay, so Thoughtseize here. Tannen here going to fetch up a land, likely Brainstorm here to protect the young Pyromancer, maybe protect the Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, let's see what Tannen wants to do here.
I love our director, Taylor. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I feel bad I wasn't able to have your back on that call because that really was a very good call now having seen both the pictures.
All right, Tannen here looking to put back actually Force of Will. I think he wants to protect that on top, but without access to another blue card in hand, it looks like. Maybe that's the Thought Scour hiding under the Blue Delta.
Right.
Pardon me. Tannen might actually want to shuffle away that Force of Will, so he might put that as the second one down. Draw for turn, keep the one that he's protecting. He has the Bolt active for this Delver of Secrets, so Liz may be looking to strip that from him here and follow it up with the powerful 1/1 insect hybrid human thing, the aberration.
You got it. It sounds like I think this is a tough decision for Liz. I think Tannen has presented a hand that is basically full of options.
Right. Well, I mean, the Young Pyromancer is not a huge deal, right? Liz actually has access to Dark Blast in hand.
That is true.
And if Tannen's able to make like one token off of it, it's innocuous. It makes things like Diabolic Edict a bit worse, but the 1/1 body itself basically just will represent maybe a few points of damage and then a chump block later on.
Yeah, and the card left on top by Tannen was Diabolic Edict, playing around Gurmag Angler, Delver of Secrets, all the possible threats.
Yep. Or even Death Shadow as a 4/4 would have been quite nice here. And that Diabolic Edict checks all of those big threats.
Right.
And with only 2 cards in hand, it has to be forced blue card in order for this Diabolic Edict not to resolve.
Yeah, I have to think Tannen just wants to deal with the Delver as soon as possible.
He does have Force of Will on top of his deck. I could see an argument for Tannen actually just
Waiting a turn?
yeah, just wait a turn, you know. But, I mean, the odds of this Diabolic Edict getting countered are pretty small. The problem is you just don't have that many. Ooh, this is the decider, apparently. Ross Merriam taking down his match against Ryan Overturf. This is for all the marbles. Of course, the marbles coming in hot on Versus Live every week, Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m., where Ross and I try to figure out who gets to keep them. Got a Ross Merriam token on the battlefield. That's branding and branding and branding.
Love
Let's
it.
go.
Emphasize those Versus Live competitors.
All right, so notably, Tannen not casting the Diabolic Edict here, wanting to save that for a larger creature. I think that's pretty smart. The Delver of Secrets is threatening, but it's not that threatening.
Thoughtseize is going to take Fatal Push away from Liz. Still with an answer to the Young Pyromancer. As you said, not going to be a huge deal. Just that one token can untap and Dark Blast here.
Wow.
Delver going to flip from Brainstorm. Excellent card off the top of the deck for Liz.
Yeah, Liz doesn't really want to cast that, though. Wants to put an emphasis on this Dark Blast to take care of that Young Pyromancer.
For sure.
That Brainstorm is a lot better when you have 1-2 other cards in hand that you can kind of shuffle away with a fetch land.
Yep. Over on Tannen's side, going to take a draw. Draws a Brainstorm of his own. Hand now Thought Scour, Brainstorm, and Diabolic Edict. Nice looking little hand for Tannen.
Yeah, I like just going for the Edict here. Your life total is in a bit of jeopardy. You know you have pertinent information now with that Thoughtseize. You know that there's no giant creature looming. But that can change in a hurry.
Yeah.
Liz untaps, gets to draw, cast Brainstorm, and any big threats that Liz is able to find, she can deploy for 1 mana very easily.
Absolutely.
That looks like a Death Shadow off the top. Whew. It wasn't.
Sometimes things are not as they appear. Liz going to pass the turn back to Tannen. This small elemental token looking to be the clock to end Liz's game, and given all the damage Liz has taken from mostly their mana base as well as Thoughtseizes and the like, it doesn't take long for this elemental remaining on the battlefield to really put Liz under some severe pressure.
Right, but at the same time, every point of damage you deal to the Death Shadow deck actually makes
Bigger
those
Death Shadow.
Shadows bigger. Yeah.
Very good point.
So Tannen actually had a pretty interesting decision here. If he goes end of turn Brainstorm, he can actually use a Thought Scour to reset the top of his deck if the 2 cards he puts back are bad. Instead opts to just burn the Thought Scour, fills up his graveyard a little bit in case he draws Gurmag. Now we're going to use basically a fully powered Brainstorm with a fetch land and a bunch of mana to use.
Finding some protection for that elemental token in the form of Force of Will.
I'm pretty sure he found a Gurmag Angler too.
Oh boy. Oh boy, he did.
Yeah, it's time to go for a ride. And the big fish is coming out to play.
Things have swung dramatically in Tannen's favor right now. Liz still with options, Brainstorm in hand, going to get a look at some other cards in the coming turns, but the clock is now ticking.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that the last 2 cards in Tannen's hand are Force of Will blue card, so it's going to take a heck of a lot for Liz to get out of this one at just 7 life. If Liz goes for a Brainstorm here, finds Force of Will blue card, puts Liz down to 6, Force of Will from Tannen effectively closes the game.
Yeah, very vulnerable spot.
So
there you see Fatal Push cleaning up the token.
start with a Brainstorm. Polluted Delta in hand. That was the draw for the turn. If I'm Tannen, I might have snapped that one off.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough decision. Again, it feels like another one of those risk-reward spots.
but it could have been a bait.
Right.
And that's something that Tannen realizes Liz has the capability of doing that. But unfortunately for Liz, just
one card in hand at this point.
Yeah, and if it's impactful, it's getting hit with that Force of Will. And if it's not impactful, the next one's getting hit with Force of Will. So this one has to be a real good one, and then the next turn has to be
also
another
a real good one.
Real good one.
Yeah, need running excellent cards. Let's see what this is. Ponder.
If there's Death Shadow on top, we have a chance.
I didn't quite make them out. Maybe Thought Seizes?
All right.
Yeah, whatever it was, it's going to be shuffled away. Was not what Liz was looking for.
A couple of gold darts.
Tannen knows this is the draw that really determines this game. It's got to be something meaningful. Otherwise, the next turn's draw is invalidated by Tannen's Force of Will.
Yeah, and now Liz could draw Brainstorm as the draw for the turn and not be able to cast it here. Go down to 1 from the attack. Next turn can draw a good one, like a Gurmag or a Death Shadow.
Yep.
And cast the Brainstorm, and then
oh, it's Death Shadow. Death Shadow off the top of the deck.
Ooh, we got a game. All right.
Now, that is, of course, going to be Force of Will, but that means the top of Liz's deck may be live, depending on what Tannen drew here. I think we know it's just a land put back from the Brainstorm. What does Liz have? Reanimate at 1. Oh.
No! If Liz was at 2 life,
oh, no.
this would be a real game. No!
So close. Heartbreaker. Well-played game on both sides by Liz and Tannen there in the Dimir Death Shadow versus Grixis Delver matchup. But the team of Grace, Merriam, and Davis are going to take that match by the slimmest of margins. What a great game.